that we have been ascribed about who we should be as a partner. When you are just with your friends, you are free to just be who you are. It's talking about freedom, right? You are just free to be who you are. And so I think friendship really allows us a space to play and develop and to kind of spread our wings. That is just fantastic.
Yes, I agree with you. Bigger and broader. We have friendships that have been decades in the running. They have just survived, and so blessed for that. But I did do it on purpose.
Yeah.
I looked up in the middle of my life and realized I was letting my friendships slip. Marriage, children, ministry was taking up all the space. And I was like, what happened to my friends? I was like 35. And I said, no. I started with that intentional time. So don't let those things slip away. Your friendships are worth building, protecting, and investing. They matter. Rupture and repair. Another phrase that, if you all haven't heard that, is almost always used in marriage counseling.
Yes.
But we never teach, what does it mean to have a disagreement, have an argument, truly return and strengthen the fabric even more than before? Can you walk us through what that looks like in sisterhood?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because, like I mentioned, conflict happens. Right? Like, we are not perfect as much as many of us try. Any perfectionists in the room? A couple people? As much as we try, we're not perfect. So that means we're going to make mistakes. We're going to betray trust. Sometimes things will happen that we didn't mean. Like you said, life gets busy and sometimes we're not available. And so that means that sometimes there are ruptures in the relationship, which means we feel more disconnected. We don't feel kind of in sync as we once did. And so after there has been a rupture, though, what's important is the repair, right? So apologizing, like, hey, I'm really sorry. I felt unavailable. I've really been busy, but I really want to make sure that I prioritize our relationship. And I think you have to be careful with that because sometimes because it takes us a while sometimes to apologize. And so we think, because I've apologized, now we should just be back on the same page. But the truth is that you also have to let the other person get back in sync if it's something they're interested in, right? Because sometimes maybe the rupture has been so great that there is no repair. But if there is an option for repair, it has to be both of you at the same time who want to get back into a good place.
How do we know when a friendship is, I almost hate to say worth saving, because I don't like the idea of attributing that kind. I don't like that. But how do we know that a friendship, that the investment necessary for repair is well invested? Is that a better way of saying that? I don't like the worth part. But how do we know whether to do that? And how do we know when to walk away? Because we know we're living in a cultural moment of no, cut off.
Right. Which I think happens to not everybody going to your next level. You better take somebody. You want me? Yeah, and I think that is also a byproduct of us focusing too much on romantic relationships because we are really quick to give partners lots of chances, right? Breaking our heart over and over again. But the one time your girl does something to step out of line, you're like, oh, she wasn't real, she a hater. Ooh.
If we hit a nerve, I think we hit a nerve. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we are often too quick to cut off relationships that actually are very meaningful and significant to us. But there are some circumstances, I think, where you have to look at what you are losing, maybe in terms of your self-esteem, resources, time, like how much you're investing, and then maybe that not being reciprocated. And so again, anytime there is some conflict, anytime there is some ruptures, I think it's important to bring that to their attention. Like, hey, I've noticed that I've been really available, but maybe I've called you several times and I don't feel like I'm getting a response. Is everything okay, right? Like really coming from a place of curiosity, see what's going on, but also going on record saying, hey, this is not okay for me, right? So I think we always give people a chance to actually redo their behavior and to do something differently. But I think after you have gone on record and said, hey, I'd like to see something change, and you don't see any changes, then I think it's time to think about, do you need to take a step back? And it doesn't have to be like this big conversation and, you know, like, oh, we aren't cool anymore. Maybe you just reprioritize where they are in your life. So maybe you're not as available anymore, right? Like maybe you're not spending a whole bunch of time with them. I think that's important. And I also think it's important to think about just because you've been friends with somebody for a long time does not mean that they will continue to be a long time friend. Gotcha. Yeah, I think we put a lot of stock in the history of a relationship and don't think enough about the actual future of the relationship and is it actually healthy for you.
I love that. It's a little too many applause on that though. I'm just saying. But I do want us to know if you do want to remove a relationship from our life if it's not healthy for us. But I'm also interested in the idea of covenant in friendship. I think that there is space in friendship to have that kind of investment. To sprinkle, as you said, a little bit of the delulu on our friendships that we do on our romantic relationships.
Absolutely.
We didn't really mean it. Maybe we have to grow together. Give that kind of grace. That your friend is not who she was 5 years ago, and you're not who you are 5 years ago. And when we've been in relationships for decades, yeah, we're gonna change. And hey, friend, what do you need from me now? Maybe that's something that once a year, I remember hearing Mama J, Pastor Sarah's mom, say that each year in her marriage, she asks Bishop that question. What do you need from me now? What if we ask our good friends once a year, what do you need from me now? And that way we're able to keep up with the intentional evolution of friendship. But if that kind of emotional investment in friendship sounds strange, I think that's a place where we can do some healing work.
And why does it sound strange, Dr. Phillips? Why do you think it sounds strange? Because in my mind, it makes perfect sense when we think about the role that friendships have. Like when you think about the lifeline that sisterhood is offering in our lives, it should have a central place.
It should. I think it might feel strange to people because we don't talk about emotional intimacy in platonic friendships. We
And
don't
I'm glad we are.
intimacy, but that's what it is. And so it shouldn't be strange.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be strange. What about groups of sisters? Sisterhood is also not just a one-on-one friendship, but we have our groups of sisterhood, and I'm a big group person. I'm just going to throw that at you and hear what comes out. Talk about groups.
Yeah, so I think a lot of us, like how many of you came here with a group of your sister friends? Yeah. We love a good girls trip, right? To something meaningful like Liberty Ball. But I think when you think about what happens in groups, and because we are both trained mental health professionals, we know that there are some dynamics that often happen in groups. And so in my book, Sister Good Heals, I talk about the fact that we often play one of 4 roles when we are in a group of sister friends.
Okay?
So you might be the firecracker.
The firecracker. We're all firecrackers.
Who thinks they're the firecracker? I never know.
Pastor Sarah affirms that I am the firecracker.
Yeah, so the firecracker is kind of like what it sounds like. Like they are the friend who, they might not say a whole bunch, but when they do, they are calling out the elephant in the room. Right? Like if something has gone awry, they are the one that says, like, right? That's your firecracker. There's also the wallflower, who is somebody who is much more subdued, but like really a mainstay in the circle and really responsible for the circle continuing. Any wallflowers?
Is this like a caretaker?
Yes, it is oftentimes a caretaker role. There's also the leader. So the leader is the one who says, okay, we're going to Women Evolve 2026. I've already booked the tickets. I've already put the deposit down. Y'all cash out the money. They keep the group text hot. Okay. One power firecracker, leader.
I always, one girl probably always get a different one.
There's a 4th one, but you can, so I did make a quiz for this. If you go to sisterhoodheals.com/quiz, you can figure out which one you are in the circle. Yeah, and it is not a better than or less than. It is really like, where do you tend to step up in circles and where might you need some support? Because again, the leader who's always like planning all the things might become resentful because it feels like other people are not pulling their weight in the circle. And so where do you maybe need to ask for some more help? I think it's an important thing to know about yourself and how you show up.
It says so sisterhood.com and there's a quiz.
Sisterhoodheals.com/quiz.
I love that. Make sure you guys take that quiz. And something you just said about knowing the role that you're contributing. You're not limited to it, but the general role you play. And that other people play a different role is so important because I think sometimes the reason we get resentful is that we expect other people to be us. And so when that group member member doesn't help you with the plan for Women of All 2026, then you get mad. But what we should really say is, if I were her and I did X, it would mean this. But her doing it doesn't necessarily mean what it would mean if you did it. We have to stop believing that everybody's thinking the same way that we're thinking. And so their behavior doesn't mean the same thing coming from them that it means coming from you. Oh, I got a little quieter than I needed it to be. If you're the person who reaches out a lot, and you have a person who doesn't reach out as much, don't interpret that. If I wasn't reaching out, it would be because I was mad. So they must be mad. Let each person explain, hey, what's going on? Like you say, curiosity. Hey, I haven't heard from you as much, and I'm just curious what's going on. And then when they give you their reasoning, believe them. She's just saying that. I know it's really because. Give people a break. Believe them. And whatever insecurity that triggers for you, that might be your therapy conversation.
Absolutely. You just said a word there, Dr. Phillips, because I think a lot of times we are creating these fantastic stories about our sister friends that have nothing to do with the truth. Right? Like we are, just world-class writing all of these novels about what she must be feeling, how she feels about me, without ever taking the time to check in and say, hey, I've been thinking this, can I check in with you about it, right? Are we expecting they are reading our minds, right? Like you said, like she should just know that this is how I like to have my birthday celebrated. I shouldn't have to tell her, look what I did for her birthday last year. But the quickest way for you to get what you want in a relationship is to ask her.
So good. I have a friend who one of their love languages is gifts. And it's my last one. So I'm not great at it. And so when we really started coming close, I said to her, look, I got one good one a year in for you. Let me do good that one. I'm not going to be great at birthday, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, birthday, Christmas. I'm going to burn. But one time a year, I'm coming.
Right, I got you.
And I got you. I think so, knowing them, but also knowing yourself. And being willing to, I think that may be a part of that softness to be seen. Say, hey, here's an area of mine that I'm not great at. But I still want to love you, so I'm going to do my best to do it well, but also this is who I am. And I don't know that we explain ourselves. Maybe not explain, but introduce ourselves. What is the role of that introduction of self?
Yeah, and constantly reintroducing yourself, right?
Yeah,
because again, like you said, you've been friends with somebody for some time, things are going to change. So just like you are constantly meeting yourself over and over again, you have to do that with your sister friends and constantly reintroduce yourself and make space. And to your earlier conversation about like the grace that we often don't extend, I think we often miss that the grace we don't extend to others is often a reflection of the grace we feel like we don't deserve. And so it's really important for us to practice being gracious with other people because it also helps us to realize we deserve grace.
Woo! That part. It goes back to that original 4 S's that you've been walking us through: soften, be vulnerable. Then we are seen, and we can see. Support. Like we're talking about that, how do we support one another? And then the 4th S was that self-support. What is that? How does it strengthen us to continue to do the others?
Yeah. So I think again, there are things that you don't know about yourself until you're in a relationship, right? Like many of us are people pleasers. Any people pleasers? Yeah. But you wouldn't know that about yourself unless you were in relationships with other people. And so again, a lot of times in friendship, we realize like, oh, I didn't really want to have Italian food, but I said yes because you wanted to have Italian food, right? So it allows us to learn how to practice maybe having better boundaries. It lets us figure out where are some areas we need to work in, but it also helps us realize like what we're really passionate about and what we're really excited about. And so sometimes in our relationship with other sisters, we realize more and more things about ourselves.
How do we extend that idea of support? So we love to make sure we're clear that we have therapists and we have our friendships. We don't try to make our friends our therapists.
Even your friends who are therapists.
Your therapists are making our therapists, right? We need to have those lines. But there's a space between friendship one-on-one and the therapy room that's often available in our community.
Yeah.
I see those as sisterhood circles in their own way. So how can, what are your thoughts on that? I'll just start there. I'm a big fan.
I love that. So group therapy is actually my favorite practice. I love groups. Because again, there are so few circumstances and places in our lives where you can get real-time feedback about how you're coming across to a room of strangers, right? And so the saying, wherever you go, there you are, really shows up in group therapy. So again, if you have trouble with assertiveness, or you're a people pleaser, or you take on other people's problems too often, all of that happens in group, and then you can actually practice doing something different. And so I think groups are a phenomenal way for people who struggle with stuff like social anxiety, if you struggle with connecting to other people, or if you have some people-pleasing tendencies or perfectionist tendencies, really anything, group is a perfect place to work on some of those things.
I love that. I'm so glad I know I'm right. I know I'm right. I want to encourage you ladies, anything that you're walking through that you might be in therapy for or consider going to therapy for, also look for a support group on that topic. So if you're struggling with your mom's addiction, there are support groups for children, the adult children of alcoholics or Al-Anon, whatever. If you are a survivor of sexual abuse or rape, there are support groups. You may also be in individual therapy, but there are support groups. There are support groups for mothers of small children. There are support groups for mothers of teens. Anything you're walking through in your life, look for a support group, because if you get in a room with other women, the stories that are shared, the wisdom that's shared, and again, like you said, Dr. Roy, you can test out new behaviors. If you go to the group every week and never speak, you can say, next week I'm gonna say something. Daggett, I'm gonna say something. And so you can practice new skills in the safe space with your sister.
Or there's a likely a member who will call you out and say, hey, you never talk. Yes, so, I just want to echo your point, Dr. Phillips, because I think, so, and you touched on it before, and I'm glad we got back to this place, the idea of shame is the greatest barrier to both our healing and our connection. And so in a group, you are able to hear, oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one. Right? And that happens in our sister friendships, I think, also. But in groups, you can really realize, like, you are not alone with any thought or feeling that you may have. It may look different, right? Like it may be flavored a little differently. But we are all humans just trying to process this thing called life. And so I think groups are really helpful in kind of taking back some of that shame that exists that makes it difficult for us to say some hard things.
I always say, when we start sharing, me becomes we.
Yes.
There's literally no thing, because the Bible says there's nothing more under the sun. So there's literally no thing that you're walking through that someone else hasn't walked through. And they are almost guaranteed to be right there in your immediate vicinity. You won't even have to look far. So you're never really alone when you start talking about what's true for you. You're never alone. What else would you love to make sure that before you leave this room, you told us about sisterhood?
Yeah, so how can we be in a place like Woman Mom and not talk about what it looks like to make new friends?
New friends,
right?
Were you surprised at how many came along?
Yeah, but I'm really glad to hear that too. Because I think once you leave school, like the college and like undergrad or grad school setting, it gets really difficult to figure out, like, how do I make new friends? But being at a place like Woman Mom is the greatest place to meet other people who have similar interests, right? And I think that we take for granted in being in spaces like this and connecting with people who are so similar to us, maybe struggle in some of the same ways, but also are interested in the same kinds of things. So I want to challenge you this weekend to take a chance, to take a risk, and introduce yourself to somebody new and get to know somebody new, because you never know what that could become. Now, I do think it's important to have realistic expectations, right? Like, this may not become your new best friend, but it could be somebody cool to hang out with for the weekend. And so I think the more we practice kind of getting out of our comfort zone and taking chances, talking to new people, the better we get with expanding our support circles.
Absolutely. So make sure y'all take some risks. Give somebody your number. Give somebody your phone number, not just your Instagram.
We can talk in the view.
You can still have it on Do Not Disturb, but let them text you or something. Remember, the first step before being being seen is to soften and be vulnerable, to take a chance. That's so important what you just said about taking a chance. You just said something else I want to pull more from you on. Different kinds of friendships. You said don't automatically expect that every person you meet is going to be what I call this mutual exchange, your secrets, their. What other roles does friendship play in our lives besides that deep secret sharing?
Yeah. Some people are just cool to like go to the movies and lunch with, or go shopping with, right? If you're not just online shopping, of course, I guess people shop still. But there are people that you just want to have fun with, and there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean that they are less of a friend. I think the tension often comes when we try to move from like movie shopping friend to my, this hit the fan at the midnight hour, this is who I call friend. Those are not often the same people. And so I think knowing where people fall in your lives really helps things to be cleaner, and it also like, it reduces the conflict and the friction because you are trying to force somebody into a spot that maybe they don't have the time and resources for. So let people show up in the way that they actually can, and you will be less disappointed.
I hope y'all caught that because that is so important. You can't make everybody be everything. And that will limit you when you talk about that friends, movies, I call it the social buddies. Yes. Some people are just social buddies, that's it. And you don't need to call them at 1 a.m. with your deepest problem. You have other people who may call you at 1 a.m. with their deepest problem, but you don't call them at 1 a.m. with yours. You may do that with somebody else. Yes. What's important is that your circle of friends meets your different needs, and not one person meeting all your needs. That is huge because we can sometimes end a friendship that is saying it failed, but really we miscategorize it.
Wow. Yeah. And there is all this research that talks again about going back to our romantic relationship, right? Like this is some Esther Perel's work that talks about how our romantic relationships are now supposed to be the center of all of the things, right? Like our best friend and all of these things. But that should be spread out. There should be multiple people in our lives who play supportive roles in our lives. And I think again, not miscategorizing those things is important.
100%. So I'm about to be incredibly unprofessional. I have no idea what time. Oh, there's the timer. There we go. Okay, I have no idea how much time I have or what's going on. Girl, we got time. We got a lot of time. Hardest thing that ever happened to you in a friendship.
Hardest thing what?
That's ever happened to you in a friendship. The hardest thing that's ever happened to you in a friendship.
Ooh, I think when I got engaged, a friend was not very excited. Yeah.
And you were able to tell us that story?
Yeah.
Amongst our quiet friends. But I'm sure there was reps of repairing in California.
Yeah. You know, so one of my closest friends, like I just was so excited to let her know that I was engaged. And then when I told her, her first response to me was not, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Her response was, are you sure? Right? And so, you know, it did take some time. Like it was post-wedding before there was like a repair to that relationship. But I think it needed to happen because I think it needed to kind of illuminate some things that I was overlooking in the friendship, right? Because that, when I look back, that wasn't necessarily the first time there had not been the excitement for something happening in my life.
So it wasn't?
It was not. But only in hindsight was I able to see that. I think I'm just going through the, you know, the day-to-day routine. I wasn't picking up on it. But that really helped me to illuminate. And when I did some reflection, I was able to see like, oh, this person hasn't really been kind of in my corner for a lot of things that I thought they would have been excited about.
How did you respond in that moment? Were you just kind of shocked and silent?
Thank you.
I think I was just deflated. And I don't even remember what I said, probably something like, yeah, of course, you know, kind of thing. But I remember like my balloon feeling like it was hot, so to speak, because I was so excited and then did not get the response I was looking for.
What were the steps you took to repair that moment with her?
Well, like I said, it didn't happen until after the wedding, because I was like, well, this didn't go like I expected it to, and so I think I began to, like, she was still in the wedding, but it was not like the planning process that I thought it would have been. And so it was post-wedding, when I was kind of coming down from the honeymoon phase and all of that, that I had a conversation with her about what that response was like and like how that felt. And she was able to to share, you know, that she was kind of in her own feelings about like her own relationship stuff, and you know, that she apologized. But I don't know that it feels like the relationship ever got back to that place that it was.
Gotcha. How did you, and I'm thinking for these practical moments because I think sometimes we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
You went through your wedding and after, how did you initiate the conversation when you did, for you all to talk about it?
I feel like it was like a random lunch. So it wasn't, I think, something that I planned to do, like, oh, hey, I'm going to talk to you about this thing. I think it kind of came up at a lunch one time, and then I just ran with it. But I do think, thinking that, I wish that I would have addressed it in the moment, because I think that that could have, like, saved more of a relationship, right? And allowed us to have a more honest conversation. Because, you know, by that time, like, you forget all the details, like, the rawness of the moment isn't still there. And I think, you know, and I wrote about this in the book because I do think weddings sometimes bring out this weird energy, I think. And it relates a lot, again, to where romantic relationships have been placed in our lives. So I think it often gets into this abandonment feeling, like if you want marriage and it hasn't happened for you when somebody else gets engaged, then it feels like I'm left out or I wasn't chosen kind of thing. And we don't often know how to articulate that, and I didn't at the time. But I think it is important to be able to articulate that, right? To say, hey, like, I'm really happy for you, but I'm also sad that this didn't happen for me yet, right? Like, and how can we actually hold space in our lives for the duality of experiences, right? Like, I can be happy for you, but also sad that this hasn't happened for me. And I think if I had that kind of conversation, it would have boded better than, like, just not saying anything and then months later having the conversation.
So I hear two pieces of advice in there for us when we have a moment with a friend that's hard. One, assume some good things about your friend. She was dealing with her own pain. She didn't handle it well. The wrong thing came out of her mouth. And then don't delay so long. Have the conversations. Yeah, have the conversations. What are some of the challenges that are especially pronounced? Because I think all humans have the same experiences, but there are some challenges that are especially pronounced for Black women when it comes to sisterhood, and some needs that are especially pronounced. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think that there are a lot of systems that are set up to work against us actually having healthy sisterhood. So especially when you think about our workplaces, right? Like, a lot of us come from workspaces where there's only one Black girl who can be successful.
Yeah.
Right? And so what that means is that then I need to protect my role as the Black woman, because can I let the new girl come in and take my spot? Like, what would that mean? Right? And so it creates this scarcity mindset, this idea that I have to be protected and now I'm being funny acting with you. But what would it look like? And I really want to challenge us to think about it. What would it look like if you get into a space and you throw the door open so that as many Black girls as possible come behind you, and then you change the system, right? I want us not to adapt to the systems that are against us, but actually think about how can sisterhood be a solve for a broken system? How can we actually make space for one another? So that's one of the biggest, is that I think that all of the isms, racism, sexism, all of those things really work against us actually being in community and relationship with one another. Because what happens when we are, right? Like, we break chains, like all of the incredible things happen. And so I think there's a lot in society that's actually set up for us not to be successful consistently.
Yeah, that scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
Or even the belief that one of the only reasons I'm in this room is because they needed a Black person. I may be qualified or overqualified, but there can be that sense of I'm the tool.
Yeah.
So another sister is not my competition.
Yeah.
And we can never allow that ever. What about cultural conversations within the community? I have been saddened by the challenging conversations between men and women in our communities right now. High value women, high value men, can't trust them, can't trust that. But I feel like it's bringing some energy amongst sisters as well. That's challenging. The way we talk about relationships, the way we talk about our connection to our brothers. What are your thoughts about that? How do we do that with our sisters?
Yeah. I think it goes back to what we've been talking about, Dr. Anita, like this whole idea that like romantic relationships are at the center. And then so when we center, when those things are central, then we feel like we already know the then everybody is my enemy, right? Like, and so then we begin to look at each other as like adversaries or like all vying for this one prize when we want the prize. Our relationships with each other are the prize, right? And so I think some of that unhealthy discourse comes from romantic relationships really being at the center. And I also really want us to be careful and mindful about how we talk to one another online. Because I think I have just seen some really, really nasty, disappointing kind of things that I know we would not say to each other if we were in person. Like, you would never say some of these things to people in person, but because we're online and like our humanity is really flat when we are just, communicating with avatars. So it feels like you are kind of almost in a reality show. These are real people with real feelings that you are talking to. And so I think thinking about, do I need to say this to this person in this way, and do I need to say it at this time? Right? Because again, sometimes we get into these parasocial relationships thinking that like we can get into somebody or like, oh, if I say it this way, they'll hear me. But you're a stranger. Like, these people don't know you. Right? You don't actually know them. No, and you don't know them, even though you may know details of what they've shared on their about their lives. You don't actually know them. And so thinking about like, hey, maybe I should just take this to my group chat as opposed to, lashing out.
I hear your word kindness. Yes. Saying that we need to be kind to each other. Be kind to women we know. Be kind to women we don't know. Be kind to women we think we know, but don't know. Right. Because you never know what somebody's walking through. You never know what they've been through. And you're right, we are in the distance that we have from one another. We can feel more comfortable not being kind to people. And I think that's a challenge. And I don't want us, especially again as Black women, and there are women from every background in the room, but especially as Black women, I think there's a stereotype of us being direct. Yeah. Well, somebody got to tell it like it is. Like, yes, but I can still be kind. Yes, so the absence of kindness. Is there anything else that you want to turn the light on for us in this cultural moment to help us cultivate healthier sisterhood?
You started a question and then we got off topic, but I want to go back to you. I started to ask about like things like jealousy and envy.
Yes.
And friendships. And I do think that is really important because I think we often look at jealousy as like this negative, unhealthy emotion. But jealousy is an emotion just like every other emotion. The issue is what do we do with the jealousy when it comes up, right? So jealousy really is just a message for you that there is some need in your life that is unmet, right? So there's something maybe that you're doing that I'm really inspired by, or something in your life that I really want to have more of. And so the jealousy really comes up as an indication. It's like your check engine light. Like, hey, something needs some attention. But sometimes instead of saying and getting curious with ourselves, we lash out, right? So when we start, maybe leaving you nasty messages, or we're being shady to you, or not celebrating your big moments. But instead, you can turn inward and say, hey, what actually do I need to tend to in my own life? What other things can I do more of? How might you even be able to help me do some of the things that I'm really wanting to do if I just ask you the question? But I don't ask you the question because I'm jealous of what's going on with you. So jealousy is not always a bad thing. It really is about what is your response to the jealousy that comes up.
I'm wondering if I ask right now, every woman in the room who's ever experienced emotional jealousy, I don't know if people would be honest. It's quiet. I'm wondering, how have you seen people transform jealousy to make themselves feel better? What else would be when it's really just plain old jealousy? How do we explain it away? I want to help people find it.
Yeah. So how do we explain jealousy?
To ourselves. So I'm trying to think like, I think a lot of people would be like, I'm jealous. So what would I say instead to make myself feel better?
So sometimes it is passive aggressive, right? So if you use the example of like a bridal issue, right? So maybe you show up late to the bridal shower, or maybe you're 2 hours late to the bachelorette party, right? So you don't say the thing, but then your actions are showing that this is not something that's important to you.
Yeah. So is your support wavering for that person? I also think it's important just paying attention to your body. What's going on? Is your jaw a little tight? Is your chest a little tight? Are you getting like shorter patience with that friend? And so when they talk about the good thing that's happening for them, are you getting short patience? It's like she just won't stop talking about it. Check on you. Why would you want joy to be limited? I think these things can hide in a lot of places. Hide in a lot of places. I want my joy and your joy to multiply each other. And so I think that's an important one. What about insecurity?
How many people watch Girlfriends, the show?
Oh, that was the show.
So I feel like there was a beautiful example of this when Tony got engaged and Joan threw herself into running a marathon and broke up with her boyfriend, right? Like we cause all of these kind of fires in our life because we don't want to deal with the thing that's actually in hand, which is the fact that she was jealous that Tony got engaged first, right? And so we sometimes will cause chaos as another way of kind of not dealing with the thing.
Don't do it, people. Don't do it. But our Bible says, rejoice with them who rejoice. If we're not feeling, but don't just do the actions. If we're not feeling joy for them, check on that. Journal about that. Cry about that. Where am I being left behind? Is this an abandonment? Or where do I have the sense of being left behind? And back to the top of our conversation, how old is this wound of mine? How old is this wound of mine? Because we look at, again, romantic relationships from our childhood, but not our friendships. And even our sibling relationships have a lot of shaping effect on how our friendships are. So if we felt like my mom liked this kid better, does that set us up for a little more insecurity in our friendships because we're still trying to be the center of something, to be seen? Yeah, it's an important thing. Couple of closing thoughts. How many friends is a good number of friends to have?
This is such a good question. I think you really only need one group.
Listen, honestly, I think a lot of times people are like, I don't have any friends, I have 2 or 3. I'm like, 2 or 3 is perfect.
Yeah, I think one good girlfriend can be life-changing for sure. But I think, sometimes it is more fun to do things with like a group of you. So 2 to 3 to 4. Now, I don't think it needs to be too big though, because I think it makes it difficult to actually have meaningful relationships. But we are also busy, like how intentional can you be with a group of 12 people?
Yeah.
Right? But 2 to 3 people, I feel like is manageable. It feels like you can actually do some really good work and be there for one another.
2 or 3, I agree with you. It's like there's only so much energy you can put in. Right? But sometimes I hear people say they wish they had more friends, and I'm like, you've got a couple, you're doing pretty good.
But maybe they're talking about those social buddies.
Right, more social buddies. It is social buddies. Go join a book club, join a ministry, whatever. There's always people doing what we like. And look at the relationships that are around you. Is it possible that hybrid investment could transform the quality of those friendships? They may already be standing right there. They may already be standing right there. And fear not. How do we recover from the wounds of lost friendships as we prepare to walk into new ones?
I think it's important to grieve. I think we think about grief often as like the death of someone, but grief happens when there is a loss of a friendship, an opportunity. And so I think just rushing past it is not going to do you well. And I think we have to grieve as if this has been a death, because it is. Like the idea of who we were to one another no longer exists. We often have like whole languages that we develop with our friends that only you and that person understand. And now all of that ceases to exist. And so I think you have to give it its proper time to mourn and make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people who don't make you feel bad about grieving your friendship. Because people will often say, oh, you got plenty of friends, or you should have left that person a long time ago, right? Like, that is not actually helpful when you are dealing with a loss. And so making sure that you're surrounding yourself with people who understand how important this was to you and will give you the time to actually grieve. But also making sure that you are doing your work in terms of journaling or talking with a therapist or whatever that looks like for you, so that you don't take those same wounds into new friendships. Because just because this friendship does not work out does not mean that there won't be other people who will love you and be significant for you, but you have to do your work on that first.
I love it. Woman of all, Dr. Joy. I want to challenge you all. Grab her book, Sister About Sisterhood. We want to do that. But I want to challenge you all to elevate the health of our sisterhood. to be kinder to women, to each other than we've been, and to invest in those relationships, especially decentering, and I don't mean start treating your man bad, but make sure that we're not centering romantic relationships as the only relationships that matter, that your sisters matter, and that it is okay to put the same efforts that you put into other kinds of relationships, your family relationships, your romantic relationships, into your sisterhood relationships. It's okay to consider the job choice. Will this overwhelm the time that I get to spend with my friends? It's okay to consider the city you move to when you're making a decision on more than money or work. But hey, a good friend lives there and I want to spend more time with my friends. It is okay for you to open up and have emotional intimacy with your friends. Sisters, this is the space for it. And I know you can do it because you're in this room and that's who we are as women of all. And I love you guys so much. Sisterhood. Thank you, Dr.